Hello and welcome back inside the Parc Fermé for podcast number 782, the Miami Grand Prix review. This is Todd.
No, Todd, not now.
AKA Negative Camber. Tonight we're gonna review the Miami Grand Prix. You know how we do this.
We watch one, then we talk about it. Then we watch one, then we talk about it. Come on, Todd.
That's what we do. But before doing all of that, I have to introduce my co-host, which of course means,
Wrecked from out of the wasteland. He's bad, he's beautiful, he's crazy.
Hello, everybody. This is Paul Charles, the International.
Paul, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Yep.
Doing good. Just got back from racing some McLarens around.
Racing some clowns at Road Atlanta. Yeah, we had a nice win for the Speed Club team, the other team I work with. So that was nice. Unfortunately, had a little big crash with the other car. That was a little unfortunate. Yeah, you don't like to crash McLarens. They're a bit expensive, but anyway.
Were they 720s?
No, they're the 570 SGT4 cars.
Oh, wow. Nice car. Yeah, I saw the picture of the crash one. It's like, that's expensive.
Yeah, it's expensive, but he was safe and he's good. We can fix it.
That's good. Yeah, we can rebuild it. We can make it better than it was.
Bigger, stronger, faster.
That's right. Just a good thing you're not writing the check for that.
Yeah, no kidding.
Oh, Paul, we had a Grand Prix in Miami, your old stomping ground, I might add.
Yes.
Let it be known, Paul. I know this about you. Our listeners may not. That in your formative years in racing, you lived in Florida. You raced in Florida and raced many tracks, raced around the streets of Miami, raced at Sebring, Daytona. You've been there. You've done that. And you are steeped in Florida history. And I might add, in your very formative days, you were in a band down there.
That's true. I got a lot of history there, don't I?
Yes, you do.
Yeah,
yes,
you're
you
right.
do.
Yeah, won my first race in Florida. Yeah, had my first concert in Florida. You're right. There's a lot of stuff I did down there.
Yes.
Hopefully I'll be in the Hall of Fame of somewhere. Maybe the Clematis Street Hall of Fame or something in West Palm Beach. I don't know. Something like that. Yeah.
Well, there could still be a warrant out for your arrest.
Well, there most likely is. There is in New York, I know that. So, yeah. Someone else is renting the car in New York this year. That's all I'm telling you.
Oh, my. Well, we had a Grand Prix in Miami. Well, not in Miami, actually. It was Miami Gardens. Just outside the Hard Rock Cafe, the home of the Miami Dolphins. Look, I'm not going to be able to go through this podcast without us talking about the Miami Grand Prix. I kind of went off on it on TalkSport with Paul Ross the other night. But so, by all accounts, let's be honest, the Miami Grand Prix was a very successful event, and I'm glad that it was. The organizers did a good job. But the gimmicky, schmaltzy stuff was cringe. It just was. The football helmets, fake beaches and marina, police escort with blaring sirens to a podium that seemed like it was in a different zip code or postal code were all elements of this race, including handing out paddock passes like they were free flyers that make it slightly embarrassing to be an American F1 fan. Look, I'm not trying to be, I've been watching Formula One most of my life, and I'm not trying to be a Formula One snob. I agree it was a successful event. But F1 has a legacy, and it has a legacy-fueled elegance to it that these kind of overly hyped marketing efforts just tarnish that legacy. It starts to parody itself, and it's unfortunate. There was a feeling like you had some wealthy owners that bought the rights to host a race with not a lot of understanding of what they'd actually bought. And most of the people in the paddock, they handed out all kinds of passes to the paddock. They had just throngs of people that were all, woo, it's Drive to Survive. We're going to the F1. We got the F1 tickets, the F1. And they all showed up in the paddock, and it just, I don't know. There's just little understanding. It almost seems like it was like a carnival with all these people walking around. They given passes to come and see the bearded lady and the world's shortest person and the sword swelling man from Persia. I mean, it was just this weird vibe about the whole thing that was overcooked, overbaked, and in my mind, it didn't really do a lot of justice to the history and elegance that is Formula One. And it became sort of a pantomime or a Punch and Judy show. Did you get that impression?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it kind of made me sad. Everything's getting a bit lampooned ever since the Netflix series, I think, perhaps. But I mean, even before that, with the Texas with the big hats, and yeah, I don't know. It's just it's going a step too far in my mind. It's making nearly a mockery of the drivers themselves, or they're making a mockery of themselves.
Hmm.
Before the event to promote it. Um, there's a seriousness to Formula One. It's a serious sport. Um, and I haven't seen any other sport where it's taken to this degree in the self-promotion at the beginning and what people put them through and expose themselves to. I think you obviously want to be lighthearted. Everyone likes a
Sure,
joke,
everyone
but
does. Yeah.
but I think it's making a bit of a joke of the joke in right. Miami seemed to anyway. And as you said, I've started my racing roots honestly in Florida. Obviously I started when I was a little kid in England, but I started progressing, went pro when I ended up moving to the States and everything. And there's a lot of serious automotive racing industry down there that's been going for decades, and fans and knowledgeable people in that part of the world. There's a lot of it comes down, from the south and moves up, and a lot of people come there, but they come with a lot, as I said, a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience, a lot of history, um, and so I'm not sure that was necessary to powder that, sprinkle that stuff on top of it a little bit, but I think it went a few steps too far, quite honestly.
Yeah, yeah, it did to me. It just seemed a little overbaked, and the problem was is that it's I don't know. Well, I'm going to leave it there. You guys all draw your
Yeah.
own conclusion.
What I
It
didn't
just
understand
caught me
is on
off.
the inside of the track, obviously you had the mermaids and the fake
Yeah,
hop, whatever, that's fine.
whatever.
But
Yeah,
there was like no one over there. Where was
yeah,
everybody? It was like there's a bunch of people stuffed in a stand over here. Yet all over here you got someone with like half a square mile between each other. I didn't understand the layout or how the hospitality worked or worked there or whatever. But it would not. I want to see fans in the stands, and I'm sure there was plenty of them. And we know it's very difficult to get tickets to this event.
yeah.
I mean, it was, and
They're
I
very
could have got
expensive.
tickets to the event, but that's because you know, threw my name in very, very early. But I'm sure there's a lot of really big F1 fans that couldn't get access to even be at the Grand Prix. So it seemed a bit of a waste, and they're missing out on an opportunity to really pack a number of grandstands at the track to be able to see F1 up
Hmm.
live, which some people may have been doing for the first time.
Yeah, yeah, right, right. Well, having said that, let's talk about the track itself. My concern was when you mentioned that we're going to have a parking lot race. It brings back a lot of horror stories from the early mid '80s and Caesar's Palace, right? And it brings back concerns around the layout and what it looked like. Now, as the track developed over the time they were building the track layout and everything, well, look, we can have some deference here. Let's try to see what they come up with. And, on the balance of it, there was certainly concerns over the asphalt, the type of asphalt, the offline slipperiness. The track was coming up in certain areas that they glued down. So they fixed it, to make sure the track didn't come up. And I thought that was good. It kind of came down to the chicane, a lot of concerns over that. Ocon, Carlos Sainz hitting the wall there. Both of them saying, we need to put Tech Pro there. That is super easy to say. If there was a crash and there's a concrete wall and did some damage, it's super easy to say, well, hey, we need to put Tech Pro. Everybody else down there put some Tech Pro up. But that is making those kind of reprofiling of a corner and those kind of things is a lot easier said. You can't on a Friday night just say, hey, let's grab some Tech Pro, chuck it down there. There's anchor points, the profile of it. There's going to be teams that aren't in favor of it. It's
Yeah,
tough to do.
and there's a lot of studying goes on in
Yes.
building a track, and they may not it may not be the best right off, and it certainly needs some change in making actually a raceable circuit. But yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
you just can't do that overnight when the people have spent months trying to design how it's going to work.
Yeah, you can't. And you think of something as easy. Well, think of like Indy 2005. When they had the tire issues, and which was clearly a safety issue, right?
Hmm.
And the Michelins were blowing up in the track surface and in the final corner. And they said, well, it's easy. Just put the chicane out there, put up some Tech Pro or whatever, and make a chicane out of it. Psh, it's not that easy. And
Mm-hmm.
there's, like you said, there's a lot of study and a lot of things go into it. Now, I think they'll take that all on board, and I think they'll make changes and reprofile that for next year, because I think that a lot of the drivers felt that was kind of the Mickey Mouse part of the section. And it was very
Mm-hmm.
difficult and pointless, right? So they probably will. But the rest of the track, that was standing, Paul. The rest of the track, how'd you see it?
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan. There's certainly no corner on this track that I'd want to pick up and put to another track that's going to be built in the future, right? There was no corner there that made me excited, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, the track, I sent a tweet out earlier about, it was the DRS race of Grand Prix of Miami. I mean, it was basically designed with DRS being the band-aid for actually allowing anyone to pass there, quite honestly.
Yeah.
I thought it was too narrow. The corners weren't thought out properly. There wasn't a good corner in there. Everyone was really in the race, just waiting for someone to screw up that hairpin. And
Yeah.
that was whatever anyone's opportunity to make a pass was. Is just, just missing a breaking point by a little bit in that one corner, which I don't know. It's not in favor of this layout. I'd have to take another look and see, I guess, what I would think about doing. But because you don't really know when you see the little scratch map going out, you can say, oh, it's going to be a great track. It's going to be a good, bad track. Till you see it in person, till they race it in person, you don't know. So we'll give them a chance to fix their woes. But overall, I was pretty disappointed in the raceability of the track. And I don't think it made F1 cars shine the way they should do in, even at Monaco, we've got that little the swimming pool section. You can see the cars working, but here I just didn't think it really showed a great light on what a Formula car really is capable of.
Yeah. It's difficult, and the whole hype around this overshadows that they spent a lot of money on this race. They want to make sure they get their money's worth, and ticket prices were high. The hype, the celebrities, which was once again laughable, and and I don't know. It seems like it was watching social media, and it just kind of fueled that whole thing. And some of the comments made about Martin Brundle and everything was certainly very sad.
I mean, the guy hates doing the walk up. Grid walk. I mean, he hates doing it. It's not. He's a Formula One driver, raced against Senna and Schumacher. He is not.
Yeah.
Who's become a knowledgeable person to comment on what it's like driving a Formula One car, racing a car during a Grand Prix, etc. And one of his jobs, unfortunately, has been this grid walk thing that he's being forced to do. He doesn't like doing them, and I can tell that. You've tell that for years. That's not really his thing, right? But he does his best. He's trying to keep his job. He's trying to do it, but I'd rather see Martin Brundle up in the commentary box and down there trying to talk to people who he doesn't know who they are. They don't know who he is, and nobody really cares that they're there.
Yeah, exactly. Getting stiff arm by Venus Williams. It's just I look at that and think, okay, certainly Venus is an incredible athlete and tennis star, but Martin Brundle's an incredible race car driver.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And it's a race car race. They're not at a tennis match.
No, exactly.
Respect where you are. If I go to a tennis match, I don't expect anyone to give a hoot who I am or what sport I like or anything like that. And it used to be, this people from other sports coming to the F1 Grand Prix that were actually fans.
Yeah,
right. They'd been fans of the sport and they were there enjoying it. Now it's just they're just there to be seen by other people watching. Not really caring really what the deal is that they're actually attending.
And that's I'm not picking on Venus. That's been kind of the way it's been of late. Just stuff the grid, bunch of A and B listers, and they whatever. I don't care. I tweeted that. I literally couldn't care less. The real celebrities for me are all of the men and women in each of those team garages. Those are the celebrities, and I would much rather have Martin spend that time talking to the mechanics, the engineers, the designers. The people that make those teams work. Those people are celebrities in my mind, and I have much more interest in what they say. So that's just my opinion. But maybe there's a lot of people that tune in to try to see Matt Damon and what he'll say about it. I don't know. Whatever. No offense, Matt. But anyway, Let's take a look at the race, how it panned out. We'll start at the very top. Red Bull taking the win. Sergio Perez in P4, Max Verstappen P1. Let's unpack that team a little bit. Max took his third win of the season, pulled to within 19 points to Leclerc in the championship. Max weekend looked a little ragged early on, and I was a little worried about that on his behalf. But at the start of the race, he had those issues with the gearbox change, overheating. It didn't get a lot of seat time on Friday and Saturday, didn't get pole. So I was a little worried because I kind of picked him for the win. There was there was some logic behind my pick there, but he got signs at the start. Great start. Waited behind Leclerc, waited for that Ferrari's tires to start to struggle. Max took the lead on lap 9, set the pace, controlled the race, but missed the safety car call just as he passed the pit entrance, and that left him vulnerable. But as it turns out, Ferrari didn't box, and I'll get into that when we're covering Ferrari why. But this left Max defending on that restart on a recovering Charles Leclerc on his hard compounds, managed to hold him off. Such was the pace advantage. Paul, I picked Max because I looked at Friday's practice. Ferrari looked strong.
Yeah.
And most of the pundits, very rightfully so, talked about their low downforce config on the Red Bull gave them that straight line speed advantage considerably over the Ferrari compared to Ferrari's high downforce, giving them the advantage in Sector 1 on the twisty bits. That's absolutely true. But for me, I saw, or at least I see, this issue with Ferrari and their tire heating in the first 4 races, right? And those long runs, those Ferraris, once they start generating those heat in the tires, they generate more heat. They get up to temperature quicker and in the window than Red Bull does, but they're a little harder on the tire wear degradation meter, right? And so I was thinking that on the balance of it, I felt like the Red Bull would have the pace based on tire wear alone. I'm not saying I'm a Delphic Oracle, but
I don't know. I'm pretty sure. I think you're a genius.
Yeah.
That's why you should be leading the fantasy points, right?
Yeah, no, I'm like dead last, I think. It's terrible.
I'm not much ahead of you either,
yeah,
unfortunately.
But I think that kind of played in, and I'm not discounting the pace advantage. I think it was almost like Red Bull knew what Ferrari's data was when they picked their setup because it was just enough,
Yeah, I mean, I think there is a lot of truth to that. The Ferraris are good. They're good at qualifying. They're good on their fresh tire pace, etc. But as the race wears on, the Red Bulls dial in a little bit more, a little better on the tire and get the most out of the tire. But don't forget the Max factor. Honestly, I mean,
yeah, true.
Look at the end of the race. You got Max fourth and Perez, Max first, Perez fourth,
right,
in the same car. So I really think Max is at the top of his game right now and is making a couple of percentage points to the advantage, not just by car difference, but by his driving. And Charles is a great driver, no doubt, but he hasn't been at that level that Max is at or has been at. Max, last year, the fight with Lewis was like the best school he could ever go to.
Yeah, true.
In honing his skill and being at the top of his game, and he's carrying that through to this year. And I think Charles will get there, and I think it's going to be a bigger fight as the race goes on. But and I think Ferrari may get their head around the tires. It's a very fine margin.
It is very fine.
So I think there's a fine margin between the two cars, and obviously one works better than the other in certain areas and for certain lengths. But also I think the Max factor is just a little bit ahead of Charles right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and when we get into Ferrari, I would say the Ferrari have a couple things to tweak. A little bit of aero, trying to solve that tire issue and the wear rate, plus their drag, reducing their drag. And I think that's kind of where Ferrari is right now, but those are solvable. So, and I sound like a Ferrari fanboy, and I am, but I do think they're solvable more so than I think maybe what Mercedes has to solve for, right?
Right.
So,
yes.
I'm not trying to be mean to Toto and team, but I think that's a truism. You talk about Perez. Perez felt he missed another Red Bull 1-2. He had a sensor issue on lap 20, loss of power. They failed that sensor out, got the car going back, but about 25 brake horsepower down. He managed to put on that attack late. trying to get around signs, cooked it a little bit, outbraked himself a little bit, just wasn't quite there. In some ways, you might agree with Horner when he said that they were lucky that Ferrari missed boxing during the safety car for fresh tires, because that may have been game over for Red Bull at that point. But I do have, at least in my mind, why I think Ferrari didn't box. We'll get into that. But that's kind of Sergio, even limping around, having down on power. I think he's right. Had he not had that loss of power, I think it would have been a 1-2.
Oh yeah, it definitely has. Well, certainly, I think he could have got by science. I just don't know about Charles. Charles was pretty strong on the restart.
Yeah,
also.
true. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. He lost a lot of time. Obviously, the safety car made up that time, so that was a zero loss at all. He ended up with fresh tires. We were expecting more out of him. They thought he was going to romp through. It just didn't happen. So that's a little unfortunate for Sergio. Say if he had a little engine issue, it doesn't seem like that's that much horsepower when you're thinking about the grandiose amount of power out there. And I think what he did was he saw one opportunity and he went for it. It didn't pay off. And after that point, his tires were done in, or the advantage from the tires was lessened. And with a little less power, he just didn't have anything left to fight with. I think he could have been a bit more patient with it, but I do understand the fact that sometimes as soon as you get to a car, you make the move straight away, because if you sit there, you could sit there forever. So It was, 50-50 shot of pulling that off. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for him.
Right.
But it was a good enough go for him, and I think he's still doing what he should be doing for the Red Bull team, and it's gonna be hard to find a reason to replace him at the end of the year, because he's doing.
I was just going to say that, Paul. I said, let's be fair. I was just going to say, in fairness to Sergio, he had a tough race, down on power, but we're talking about it's a shame they didn't have a 1-2, but it was a 1-4, right? And in past teammates, to be honest with you, I don't know that it would have been fourth, right?
Right.
So Sergio's doing the job and he's getting it done, and it would be a very hard thing to make a decision to walk away from Sergio for sure. It was a great result. Let's talk about Ferrari. Charles Leclerc P2 on the podium, Carlos Sainz P3 on the podium after that wreck. That's saying something for Carlos, kind of bounce back like that. I think he's been in his head a little bit with the previous 4 races. So, it was good to see him on the podium. Charles had a good start. 9 laps later, though, his tires began to struggle on the edge of that heat window we talked about. And with DRS, Max made quick work of him down that straight. Now, Red Bull were relieved that Ferrari chose not to bring Charles in during that safety car, because Charles hadn't got to the pit entrance, so he had the option to come in. But as the team only had a set of fresh hard compounds left, it would have taken a long time to heat cycle those hards and get them in the window. So they banked that their ability during the safety car period, they're going to cool those tires down, and they banked on their ability to get right back into that heat cycle with their tires quicker than Red Bull does, which I think they can do, right?
Yeah.
So they got that temperature quicker than Red Bull did on the restart, meaning Charles mounted a terrific attack after that safety car period. It was all, Max had a lot of work to do to keep him behind, because he got in that heat cycle quicker on his hard compounds. But ultimately, that straight line speed, as the pundit said at the beginning of the race, just was too much.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's for flip-flops, right? Red Bull was always the car that handled well and lost a little in the straight, so things have flip-flopped quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I think Charles had a great race. It was unfortunate that had that drop off there at not a very opportune time for Max to make gains on it. I mean, the strategy for tires is tough, right? Over a weekend, they want to get the data, but you should have a couple more bullets in the gun coming into the race, rather than being kind of really narrowed into that place where you only had one set of hards at the end. It's nice to have. Certainly a street race, I feel, where it's more likely to have safety car intervention than maybe regular road courses. But far be it from me to change their strategy on their tire strategy over the weekend. With Sainz, it all comes into the past. If you want to look at that, I was thinking to myself on that move at the start, and Max had a great start. He didn't really do any practice starts because they were a little worried about the reliability.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for him to get it that right was pretty impressive. And Sainz got a decent run, but it's all to do with what's happened in the past 2 races, right? I mean, Sainz has been out so early and had terrible starts. He's just not going to be as confident as Max is going into that first turn. And because ultimately, I think Sainz could have held him off being at Sainz's best in that particular place and time, but because of Sainz history, he just needed to finish the race.
Yeah,
he needed to get a good finish, so he didn't go just that little bit to try and thwart Max in the braking zone. Max took full advantage of it because he is at his highest in his talent and made that move, and that was really pivotal to allow Max to attack Charles again. Else it could have been a very different race. Just from that start line all the way to turn 1 could have made a whole difference to Charles Leclerc's life too.
Yeah, and I kind of think Martin Brundle's right on the Sky broadcast. I think he's right. There probably was a lot of those comments. Look, it's an odd track, it's new, weird chicane. Just survive this race.
Yeah.
Don't put it in the wall. Don't do anything stupid. Just bring it home, and if possible, in the points, right? And I think for Carlos, I think it is. It's not. It's not doing anything crazy, not getting another DNF. Just bring it home,
Right.
slot in and have a good race, right?
Yep. And the good thing is now he can move on to the next race without something tragic happening previously. So he can carry this momentum forward. Eventually, he's going to wash it all off and be back to the Carlos Sainz we know and love.
Yeah, right. This if Carlos is coming back into it, had that crash, earlier in the weekend, look, if you're going to go 10 tenths or even 11 tenths at this point, this probably isn't the race to do it at.
Yeah.
Or the track, right? So anyway, let's talk about Mercedes. Lewis Hamilton P6, George Russell in P5. Russell started on the hards, dropped down to 16th at the start, Paul. And Lewis, equally got tapped by Alonso, dropped down to 8th. Things not looking good at the beginning. Now, George did that long stint on their hard compounds. And to be very fair here, you could say that he benefited from the safety car, and you'd be right. But we need to be fair here. He started putting in some really good laps on those hard compounds once he got them into the window and really made a lot of ground in the back long before the safety car came out. So George agreed with the team. It's a heads-up move by the team and strategy. George agreeing with it, saying, hey, why don't we just wait? Let's just let the race come to us. We all feel like there's going to be a safety car or virtual safety car. That's exactly what happened. So when the virtual safety car came out, by running long, setting in great times, this really played in the hand. Yes, this virtual safety car gave him a free stop, but he had made a lot of ground up until that point. I'm not going to oversell it, but I think it's important to mention. So when the virtual safety car came out, he got to benefit for fresh tires, right? And then that virtual safety car turned into a full safety car session. Didn't help Lewis, got unlucky on that. But I think, I don't want to overplay George's race, but I think up until that point, it was just a heads-up move by him and the team with the strategy waiting that long, and it was a great performance on those hards.
Yeah, I think so. And going back to the Ferrari thing with the switching tires, the differential on the tires, new and old, was not very large.
Yeah, right.
So the risk or reward of coming in maybe was not so great there. But yeah, I mean, you earn your own luck sometimes, and sometimes the earning it is not spectacular. It's just hard graft through the race, just pounding out the laps in clean air while everyone's pitting, and just keep going and going and saving the tires and making sure they're still working for you all through a very, very long stint. That earns your right to the benefit of the safety car, quite honestly.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, it's not all luck, it's earned luck right there. And he did it, and he had just enough tire to give him some advantage, and got by Lewis. You see him, he got by Lewis, he went around off the road and went inside, and he didn't pass Lewis using that cutoff, but it did position him in a place to be able to pass Lewis at the next corner. So then he had to give back that position. But
I think the team thing, and look, let's not have any questions over that. Did he gain an advantage? Maybe, he
Yeah.
didn't pass him, but he probably gained an advantage. Let's give it back and let him have a go because he's on fresher tires. And that was kind of a foregone conclusion at that point.
Right. It's interesting in Toto interviews, and I think you alluded to it last time, how he's still Lewis 100%, and George just seems to be an afterthought. Even in the interviews after this, well, we did this, and then they were asking him about Russell, and he just relates it back to Lewis. It's a strange thing to me that I thought Russell's been in his group of people for a while too. I would have thought we'd had a bit more respect for him, but it seems Toto is still definitely more in the LH club than he is the Russell club right now.
Yeah, it didn't come across. If he is a big supporter, it didn't really come across much.
Yeah.
Talking about Lewis, he started on the mediums, got punted by Alonso. That kind of sucked. Dropped him back down to 8th, but he managed to get back up to 6th. I thought there was a little bit of a weird kind of radio conversation. I don't know that I heard the entirety of it, but there was this conversation with the team saying, "Okay, it's your call. What do you want to do?" And Lewis kind of animated. Now I don't know. If you think back last year, sometimes Lewis gets pretty animated. He's making the call, right?
Right.
So the team trying to have some deference for Lewis there, saying, I don't know, Lewis, we could box, but it's your call. I don't know if it was that sort of thing. Lewis sort of intimating he was confused why the team was putting that in his hands. He was saying, they've got all the data. They know where everybody is. I don't,
Right.
Don't ask me to make that call. You're sitting in front of the laptop.
I think the question was wrong. The question shouldn't be, should we box or not? You say, what performance do you think you could eke out of new tires versus old tires? And then they do the calculation. I really think the question was wrong. So, and I agree with Lewis. He shouldn't be making that decision. He doesn't know where everyone is, or, we all have, in the pit lane, you have the computers that can tell where you should inevitably come out. He cannot see where everyone is on the track. So the team have a lot more better information. The information Lewis does have is how does the tire feel and his experience with the tire on this track, and does he think he can extract whatever performance out of it per lap?
Right. Yeah, I think you're right, Paul. I just think it's the wrong question. I think maybe, asking what Lewis feels like he can do on the current situation, and then running the, crunching the numbers. But, and that kind of left what I would say is just maybe some fissures or slight cracks in this team at the end of the race. Lewis has all of his American friends there and all that stuff, and I get it, but there's a tremendous amount of pressure. At the end of the day, George has beaten him 4 out of the first 5 races, right? So I get all that. But at the end, he radioed, saying, to the team, look, your strategy is not helping me here. It's comments like that makes me wonder anyway if things aren't slightly unraveling a little bit over there.
Yeah. There's nothing Lewis is going to accept less than being beaten by his new teammate. That's for sure.
Yeah. Lewis isn't going to like that, nor should he. But I think the other odd thing for me, Paul, was what the team did. I mean, look, the pace difference between Friday for George and Saturday was way off, right? I mean, he looked really on it on Friday, and then come Saturday for qualifying, I mean, it was like a different car. So I'm not sure what they tried, but Friday seemed to be porpoising a lot less or almost at none.
Right.
And then relatively speaking, he was much quicker on Friday, but then Saturday came and like the porpoising was totally back and George was markedly slower. So I don't know if they went, I think maybe they said maybe they try to set up direction change and boy, you could see the difference though.
Yeah, no, you could. It looks pretty brutal. But obviously they're on their back foot. They're trying to find performance in the car. Where the performance can be gained, but every time they push that limit too far, they have extreme porpoising, and so I think they just went a step too far in trying to get a little bit more performance out of it. And as I said, the ride height deal, it takes away ultimate lap time, but it brings consistent lap time, and I think they just went a step too far, and George ended up paying the price pretty high. But they need to start throwing things at it, because they need to they need to fix this problem, and you don't have off-site testing. You have to do it during the Grand Prix. So they're making their calculations, they're throwing it out there, and whatever doesn't work, they're going to throw it in the bin and try something new, because there's a serious differential between them and Ferrari and Red Bull, and they need, they're used to being champions and winning races, and that's exactly what they're striving for.
Yeah, I think Toto said, at some point here soon, he's not opposed to going back to an older version or iteration of this car. That he said, but on paper, he's not opposed to going back to an older iteration of the car that on paper is slower.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I think to your point, Paul, maybe on paper it is slower, but at some point, isn't it worth trying? Because this thing seems to be pretty elusive,
Yeah.
It really does. Let's talk about Alfa Romeo, Valtteri Bottas, P7, Joe Guan Yu, a DNF, unfortunately. Bottas running in fifth, Paul. He cooked a corner late in the race, allowing Lewis and George by him, unfortunately. It's a shame, because I bet he would have loved to beat his old team. Still not a bad day. I mean, he's in the points, et cetera, et cetera. But I guess in fairness to him, look, George came out on fresh tires, so I don't know that he was going to hold George off anyway. But kind of felt like maybe he would Lewis, so I don't know. I'm being hard on him. I shouldn't. He's in the points, but I kind of feel like he maybe handed sixth at least to Lewis and possibly George.
Well, as we saw with Sainz and Perez, just because you had new tires didn't automatically give you
true.
place.
Yeah, true.
And ultimately the track was tough for passing and DRS passes, depending. And everyone was just waiting for a mistake at the hairpin. He was distracted by those guys fighting right behind him, which his job is not to be distracted,
Yeah, right,
so it's his mistake. And I think you're right. I mean, I think he possibly would have lost a spot. I don't think he would have actually lost two. And I think Valtteri's doing a great job and really resurrected what a lot of people thought, including myself, about how capable he is.
Yeah, for sure. I think he's doing it. I thought the commentary was a little harsh on Joe, saying, he really hadn't done much in the last couple of races. But, this DNF wasn't his issue. It was a cooling issue with the car. It's not his fault. He had to box and retire. That's had nothing to do with him.
Right.
But even, the last couple, the way I look at Joe at this point, as a rookie, there's so many things that he could have done wrong by now, and he hasn't. He's not on the podium, but he's thereabouts with Valtteri. And as a rookie, I think he's doing a great job. I'm not trying to overplay it, but I think saying, well, he hadn't really done much the last few races. Well, I think that's a good thing for a rookie.
Right. Hasn't done anything spectacularly wrong either, right?
Yeah.
No, I think he's done a good job. He sounds good in the car. He's how he speaks to the team, etc. A little different than Yuki when he first came in, and probably still is talking that way.
I'm sure.
But and he's had some good performances. He's had some good dicing, good racecraft. He's a good addition to the grid, I feel.
Yeah, I do too. Let's talk about Alpine. Fernando Alonso, P11, Esteban Ocon in P8. Ocon started at the back, Paul, after not qualifying. He had that accident, cracked the chassis, had to rebuild that car. The team did a just incredible job of putting that car, a new car, back together. He started on the hard compound like George did, and that actually worked a treat. He got that free stop under the safety car, again, like George, put him up amongst the top 10, picked up a couple of places, and then gave the team good points for their hard work in building that new chassis. So I think he had a really good race running up in P8. Really one of my applicants for driver of the race.
Yeah, definitely good race. One we didn't really see very much of, unfortunately.
Right.
But just like George, it was like all the work's done off the ball right there. They're running out in clean air and just pounding out laps, giving themselves in the position, giving themselves a chance to jump on an opportunity, and that's exactly what he did. So I'm sure the mechanics are very happy for that. The late night he put him through, and that's a real bonus going into the future for the whole team, I think.
Yeah, no doubt. Fernando tapped Lewis at the start, as I mentioned. Then he clouded Gasly on the inside lunge later on in
Hmm.
the race and got a penalty for that. That dropped him out of the points down to P11. He apologized for that. He said it was his fault. Yeah, he knew it.
Yeah,
It
it
was his fault.
was a bit
On
clumsy race for older
Yeah, it
Fernando,
kind of was.
unfortunately.
I think he was trying to maybe get more out of the car than what it
Yeah,
had,
yeah,
and is unlucky with the safety car too. That didn't help him, and then the penalty dropped him to a P11. So
yep.
not a good race for old Fred.
No.
Let's see. It was a good race for Williams and Alex Albon up into P9. Nicholas Latifi left head scratching down at P14, just so he didn't understand what the hell was going on with their
Well,
pace.
that's and there lies the problem, Nicholas.
Well, it kind of makes two of us, yeah. Look, let's talk about Albon first. He did a great job. You look, being in the right spot to take advantage of attrition, that is part of it. Paul mentioned it with George Russell. It's about that hard graft. You got to put in the laps and be there to take advantage. And he was, and we've talked about this in the past. Yes, was he handed those two spots when Mick and Vettel went out? Yes, he was, but he was there to take advantage of that in a Williams, no less. And, he had a good run near the top 10 all day long, moved in the top 10 with Mick and Seb's collision, inherited that spot. And then with Alonso's penalty, he had 10th on merit, inherited ninth when Alonso got that penalty. So a very good race for Alex.
Yeah, no, he's had a great comeback, just a year off, obviously, but come back,
Yeah.
and he's a shining star for that team. Um, as we said at the beginning of the year, I don't think there's going to be a perennial back marker this year. Everyone's going to have a go at the back. Not everyone, but some of the teams are going to have to be the back markers. But Williams are not going to be the consistent back marker, and Albon's really helping forward this team in that world and to be able to fight in the mid pack and with his performances, and he's given them an opportunity to think outside the box and strategy, because he's able to put forth that strategy and jump on the opportunity when it arises.
Yeah, and if you're a Williams fan, at the end of last year, think, gosh, we're losing George. What a wonderful talent George is,
Mm-hmm.
and what he was delivering for that team. Arguably above their station, and what the car had an interest in doing. But I would say, and Alex, he's not that far off the mark. I still think
No.
you've got a really a good driver to get excited about in Alex's hands, doing very, very similar things to what George was doing there. So
Yeah,
it was
absolutely.
very good. So Latifi started on the hards, box just prior to the safety car, kind of hung out on that. Didn't benefit like the others. He also said that he didn't understand where their pace went, but he ended up down in 14th. It's a harsh reality that he's just, he was outgunned by George last year. Now he's getting outgunned by Alex this year.
Yeah.
And, at least he kept it out of the wall. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
But once your head is in a certain space, it's very tough to get out of that space.
It is. It is. I mean, he's a decent driver, not a great driver. He's been up against a couple of really potentially great drivers.
Yeah, right.
And so it makes it look worse than maybe it possibly would be. If
Yeah.
if Giovinazzi was his teammate, it might be a little different, but then the team wouldn't be pushed forward either.
Yeah, right.
He's had some highlights, but in general, this is what you kind of expect from him.
Yep. McLaren, Lando Norris at DNF, unfortunately. Dan Ricciardo down in P13. Lando was running in the points, but had that slow stop, dropped him down in the field. And then when Norris tried to get around Gasly, oddly, I guess it took him out, basically. I mean, it appeared to me that Pierre just maybe didn't even know he was there. It's what it kind
Yeah.
of looked like to me. They two collided into Lando's race at that point, unfortunately. It ultimately ended Pierce too. But I don't know exactly what happened there. I will say that I think McLaren on the balance, I think Zach was right on the grid when he said he just didn't think this track was really going to flatter their cars, and I don't think it did. And so
Yeah.
Lando unfortunately out of the race.
Yeah, it definitely didn't. I think in that incident, Gasly was a little distracted by everything that had just been going on. He was, some on TV, at least the feed that I was listening to, were like, oh well, he was as far right as he could be. Well, that's not actually true. He should have actually been closer to the wall. If he was having that big an issue, getting off the corner, etc., he should give a bit more room. And I think Lando, not rightly, expected that to be the case, because if Lando was a little further out, then he'd be really on some nasty stuff in the dirt and everything. So I think Lando was really on the correct trajectory to get around Gasly. Gasly just didn't stay on a parallel with that inside wall and kind of came out a little bit, and that caught Lando out, and the rest is history pretty much.
Yeah. Right. Dan ran longer than anyone on the medium tires, had a punchy race midfield, even ran off track, gaining advantage, got a penalty for his efforts on that. Like I said, the team knew this wouldn't flatter the car, and I think Dan said he felt he spent most of the day, he said, really, this entire race, I just spent most of it defending, never really attacking.
Yeah. And that's definitely not how you like. He had one good, like, big lunge under part braking, which was the old Dan. But he's, I don't know what to say about Dan. It's, obviously we've got new tracks, new cars, etc. Hopefully settle down and get back to really being the equal of Lando at least, right?
Yeah, maybe less half shirts and more
yes,
racing.
left half shirts for sure, please.
Yeah. Aston Martin, Lance Stroll P10, Sebastian Vettel DNF, unfortunately. Critical, but I will say, before the race started, Paul, a critical error in their fuel prep. The fuel was too cold. It has to be a certain temperature, above a certain temperature. They chill that fuel because you get more horsepower with colder fuel, but they had it too cold. Leaving both cars starting from pit lane. And I got to think, I don't know who's in charge of that in there, but that's a big error impacting both cars starting from pit lane. I mean, I don't know if there was anything that turned him into, Lawrence the Astral. I think he probably was then. That was brutal.
Yeah, you don't want those very avoidable technical mistakes to happen. And that was pretty out there in front of God and everybody, right?
Yeah, it really was.
So it was probably kind of an ugly weekend for Aston Martin in the end. Yeah. I think they're lucky to even get a point, really.
Yeah, kind of. They started in pit lane. They started making progress to the field on their hard compounds, and the safety car session kind of put them back up in the points. So that was good. They got that stop, but that's when things really got ugly. Sebastian got spun by Schumacher late in the race. Lance had that tussle with Magnussen that just it seemed kind of unnecessary. So the Haas's kind of undid Aston Martin's race, if you will.
Right.
Yes. And then Alonso's penalty gave Lance P10, but Lance was, cursing the entire race, the track, everything about the entire weekend. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Not a good race.
No Olympus for you this week, Lance.
No. Sorry. Yeah, really was bad. AlphaTauri, Pierre Gasly at DNF, and Yuki Tsunoda down at P12. Pierre had a good start, actually. What looked like he might have a decent race for the points. And as he passed Hamilton early on at the start, driving well, unfortunately, he got punted by Alonso and was nursing that damage back to the pits until he got clouded by Norris, retiring the car. I say that tongue-in-cheek, but, anyway, we talked about that incident. So that pretty much put paid to Pierre's race. It's unfortunate. He's just having a tough year so far.
Yeah. The car definitely has pace on occasion, but definitely not the solid sixth place finishes he was knocking down every race. I think they'll be a lot better when they go to Europe.
Yeah,
a lot more suited to that kind of stuff. But and Yuki just didn't really show up as far as I can tell.
No, just drifted backwards on its medium tires, and then he got in that DRS train, and that was it.
Yep.
So he kind of said, I got passed by everybody. Yeah, kind of did. Not a good race. And finally, Haas F1, Mick Schumacher down at P15, Kevin Magnussen at DNF for their home race, Paul. Things started off well. They were running up there. They had a bit of a battle between them, very fair battle between the two. Mick kind of saying, I'm tired of getting beat by Kev here, and, was ahead. Looked good, looked in the points. And then Mick, this would have been his first point score in Formula One, threw it away. He had that ill-advised pass on his mentor, Sebastian Vettel, taking both effectively out of the race. A very bad move. And Kevin tried that pass, as I said, on Stroll. That was ill-advised as well. Damaged his front wing, had to limp back. He's a DNF. Just a brutal home race. And it's unfortunate because it seemed like it was unnecessary, really.
Yeah. I mean, the first half of the race was they were in the amongst the thick of it, right? And and I was happy for Mick to be right there. They were both going to and fro with Magnussen. Definitely no slouch at all. So, I mean, I think Schumacher's made great gains on pace in general.
Yeah.
But that was a pretty dumb move on Seb, unnecessary for sure, and he threw away points, and it's going to be difficult. It's difficult when you take out your mentor. I'm not sure what happens the next morning at breakfast, but I'm sure it wasn't pleasant. But I'm sure Seb has a big board up here and explaining the ABCs of making a pass clean, and because definitely Mick doesn't have a lot of opportunities to score points, and definitely doesn't need to throw them away by making those kind of dumb moves.
I don't know. Maybe Seb will come up with some sort of cute T-shirt he can wear for their breakfast in the morning.
And underwear out, please, Mick.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So that's how the race finished. That's how it was. Let's hand out some awards. First award is always move of the race. Yeah.
We'll do it live.
That's right. Paul, who'd you have? Move of the race.
Well, I got Verstappen on Sainz. I think it was a crucial pass for Verstappen to win the race. Honestly, if he didn't make that move, he had a great start without any practices. You know, it was a tough, hard move, but they both got through it. And that's it. It was pivotal because it put him on the back tail of Leclerc, and the rest is, he wore him down, went through, passed, and won the race because of it.
Yeah, pivotal move in that entire scenario. I agree. I had George Russell staying out. I think that was really pivotal for them to get, Lewis running there in sixth, possibly battling for fifth, sixth, whatever it might be. Getting Lewis up there and in the points is important for Mercedes at this point. They were ahead of McLaren, who had previously been running sort of best of the rest. So I think it's really important. So George mired down in 16th. Had they boxed him, put on fresh tires, he just wouldn't have been there. So I think Mercedes maximizing their points haul was really important, and part of that is that team strategy. I just think the team read that right, stayed out, rolled the dice, and it was the right move. So it gets George up there with Lewis in the points. The team desperately need those points, and I think it was good. Also, on a personal level for George, continuing his top 5 finish, I think is good. But more importantly, the strategy for the team, getting both cars in the points, is important. Let's hand out Donkey of the Race. Oh my. All right, Paul, who's your donkey?
Well, there's a few running around there.
Me too.
It's kind of a field of donkeys, quite honestly.
Yeah.
I could put it into the forced ore and pumpkin circumstance of the whole event, but I'm not going to get already been too negative on it. Probably people aren't appreciating that, but so I'm just going to pick Mick on Vettel. I think as there was a couple of bad moves going in there, and that was definitely probably the most egregious, I would say. So come on, Mick, slap it out. Let's get on with it.
Yeah, I could have given it to the podium delay with the police escort thing, and it was just weird. The helmets, that was just a little weird. I feel like I'm picking on Pierre. I'm going to change. I agree with you. I think Mick was bad.
Alonso had a
messy race from a 2-time champ. I could give it to. I may just give it to Kev on Haas. It just seemed like they threw away points there, and
definitely,
and threw away the race, and at their home race, I just think it was bad. So I'll give it to Mag. We'll pick on the Haas team there, Paul. And then finally is drive of the race.
Get down.
Get in there, Lewis.
All right, Paul, drive of the race.
There, Lewis.
Get in there,
Lewis. Well, I'd love to give it to Willie T. Ribbs. He was a driver once.
Yeah.
He didn't technically drive in this race, but I was highly entertained by his awkward interviews.
Yeah, it was awkward.
So, some friends of mine, that was terrible. It's like, you know what? It's better than what's his face, the screamer.
Davide.
Yeah, Davide. Oh my God. I mean, Willie T. He obviously, if you knew him beforehand, you probably wouldn't have picked him to do this. Right. So I don't know who actually said, let's get Willie T to do this, because you honestly don't know what he's going to do.
You don't.
And I was half my entertainment was waiting for what he was actually going to do, not what he just did. Quite honestly, I didn't know what to expect, but He'd obviously thought a lot about it.
Yeah.
And he had a lot of pre-thoughts on what he should ask people to show his prowess of driving. How are your tires? How are the chassis? How you feeling? Hey champ, Ali told me about. I just honestly, I was highly entertained by the whole thing.
Yeah,
wasn't professional at all, but whatever, shake it up a little bit.
Yeah.
But in the end,
Willie.
In the end, I'm gonna have to give it to George Russell for once again, pulling a car that should barely be in the top 5 right now into the top 5 consistently. So good job, George.
Yeah, look, you win. Like we always say, every time a safety car comes out, there's winners and there's losers. And unfortunately, it didn't help Lewis. But there's a lot of good reasons, legit reasons for Lewis being 6th and George in 5th. But at the end of the day, you start looking at that tally, and there's a narrative. 4 out of 5 races, there's just a narrative there.
Yeah. And what I like to say is, when you're the champion, it's Christmas every day.
Yeah, you're right.
I like to say.
Right. The whole world is celebrating.
The whole world, every single one of them, even the people in the midst of a war. Yes, they're all celebrating you right now.
Even Lewis Hamilton fans are celebrating your win. Maybe not. So it's tough. But it's worthy. I'm giving it to Alex Albon.
Good job. Yeah.
Yeah, I could give it to Ocon too, but I'm giving it to Alex Albon because I got to tell you that Williams, if queried, that Williams car would tell you I have no interest in being in the points, none whatsoever. And for Alex to wrestle that car up, look, on one side you could say it's a Williams, okay, and it's not going to be a front runner, but honestly, I think Alex had some big shoes to fill there. George Russell did a hell of a job for Williams in that car and on Saturdays. And I think in its own quiet way towards the back of the grid, I still think those are big shoes to fill. And I think Alex is acquitting himself quite well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm sure the team were usually disappointed to lose George.
And
no
it's
doubt. Who's the new kid?
Yeah.
We sure like George.
Yeah.
It is tough to be the new kid to come in and gain favor, but he's gaining favor by what he's doing on the track. So great job.
Yeah, great.
Alex.
Just a very likable guy. Coloring his hair red, superstition. Just I couldn't be happier for him. He's doing a great job.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's do some mailbag.
You got mail.
All right. We got one from Ryan Dunn. How are you, Ryan? Thanks so much for the question in our mailbag section on our website, Ryan. Really appreciate it. Ryan's question is this. Question for you guys about DRS. What if F1 handled DRS like IndyCar does with push to pass? Each driver gets a set number of activations per race and can use them anytime they want for passing, defending, or just playing catch up. My knee jerk is I think that'd be better than what we've got.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for sure, Ryan. But I'm kind of like Paul. I'm just saying if you're going to have DRS, just let them use it wherever they want. Kind of like the F duct, when it came out.
Yeah, my whole thing was allow someone to be able to fight back with it. I'm actually would be more in favor with that scenario.
I would too.
Where you get a certain amount of DRS uses, then you have to measure it. You have to work a little for passes because you want to save some of them in there. Oh, obviously we don't want DRS at all. But if we had to, I'd be much more in favor of what Ryan is saying, where everyone gets 20.
Yep.
Then it's equal. Our problem with DRS is it makes the cars unequal unfairly.
Yeah, it's unfair.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it's not real passing. You don't have to work for it. So
yeah, and I agree with the drivers about Miami. They need to put those detection zones before the corners, not after.
Yes.
Kind of agree with that.
Or make the track so you can actually pass without the need for it.
Yeah, well, there's a novel idea.
Yeah, there's a novel idea. I mean, I really think this track was put together with DRS being, as I said before, the Band-Aid. It's like, well, we can do that. Yeah, but we'll throw in DRS zones.
Yeah,
we don't need to worry about that. It's all good.
Right.
Yeah, DRS to make it exciting.
More DRS, everything will be fine.
Yeah.
It won't.
I hope for a little rain shower in the middle afternoon in Florida, which for some reason didn't happen.
Yeah, so. It's kind of funny because in the past, you and I have always been against DRS, and I'm not a fan of the high degradation tires either. Never have been.
Right.
But The DRS was unfair for everybody. Now with the new regulations of these cars, now we've created DRS trains, which you old listeners that have been around, you'll know what a Yarno Truly train is. That's effectively what we have now with DRS. It's taken the place of Yarno True. It's now the DRS train. You know, Lewis has been a victim of it. Yuki's a victim of it this past weekend, and now that's what we're creating. So when you throw more DRS, it's just more DRS trains. So they're going to have to rethink the whole what they're doing there, because now it's
or
become
just stand by what they said originally and not have DRS anymore, because their new aerodynamic
allows for
rules
passing.
Allows for passing.
That's right. So Ryan, I agree with you. At this point, I'd much prefer that for sure. So, all right. Well, that does it for this podcast. This is what we think of the Miami Grand Prix. Let us know what you think of the Miami Grand Prix, and you can do that by going to theparcfermé.com. Share your opinion. Just one rule, just do it with quorum civility, as always, no personal attacks. If you like this podcast, you can go over to iTunes, give us a good rating, give us some love over there. We'd much appreciate it. And if you really like this podcast, share it with your friends. Let them know about it. So if you're
or invite us around to dinner or something.
Or why not? Yeah, that'd be good too. Let's do that. Paul likes a good curry because he's English.
Right. Curry with a nice IPA on the side. On the side. I'm there.
On the other hand, I'm not a fan of curry. I'm sorry, I'm just not.
It's a crying shame. Really.
I know it is. Yeah, it is. I wish I liked it, because
you do like good beer, so there you go.
I do like good beer. Yes, I do. I'm spoiled by my
Belgian friends. You're an aficionado of the Chimay, so well done.
That's right. That's right. And I must say, the new greens are really nice. So, all right. So that does it. A huge thank you to our Patreon supporters. A couple of you joined this week. We've been losing a few, and I understand. I get it and everything. But a couple of you said, hey, they're losing support. I'm going to jump in and support us. So I really do appreciate it. Because quite honestly, and I'm not lying, we would not do this podcast if it wasn't for you guys at our Patreon supporters. So thank you so much. And those of you that are supporting us even through PayPal or whatever it might be on a monthly basis, we couldn't do this without all of you. So thank you so much. Until next time, we got a couple weeks to go back. You know where we go, Paul.
Barcelona!
Going to Española.
Yes, I'm excited.
Should have fun at Spain. It should be exciting. So we go back. So I'll find Grace. We'll come back. We'll have a chin wag about the news in F1 next week. And then, Paul, I got you for 2 weeks on the trot, Spain, and the Crown Jewel, Monaco.
Okay, what am I doing next? Well, next week I got a race at Mid-Ohio, so that's good that I've got that weekend off. Then, that's right. The Heart of Racing are doing drift in Orlando that next weekend, so I'm going to have plenty of time to watch F1 while that's going on. So.
That's right. Well, you're doing drift, but you're doing it in an Aston Martin.
That's right. Yeah.
It's a cool looking car, man.
It is cool, and shrieks. That thing shrieks. The V12, man, it shrieks.
Awesome.
I don't really get drifting, but that I do get a good engine sound. And definitely got that.
You may not get it, but you definitely can do it, because I've ridden with you in a drifting Mustang.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun to do.
Yeah,
for sure. Absolutely. Who doesn't like going sideways? Yeah.
So Paul was like, hey, you want to come over to this thing where I'm driving, doing drifting in a Mustang? So are you kidding? Yeah, I'm there. So I get over there. I get in the car. Paul looks at me, and we go, woo! And I'm out there drifting. He's hanging that Mustang out. We're burning it. And then we get done, and Paul's like, yeah, I may have pissed him off a little bit and overdid it with you. But, but that was awesome, because you were giving me a great ride. It was so fun.
Hanging it out. Great. Good stuff.
Yeah, if you can ride with Paul in an Audi R8 at full tilt, full chat, or at a drifting, I highly recommend it, because he's awesome. So anyway, all right, Paul, we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Until that time, thank you so much, folks, and we will see you next week. Until that time, this is Todd, a.k.a. Negative Camera, saying so long.
That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.